Welcome back to the deep dive. Pull up a chair, or
Yep.
maybe pack a bag, because today we are definitely hitting the road, diving into a truly iconic piece of American literature.
We are indeed. Our sources really give us a lot to work with on Jack Kerouac's On the Road.
Absolutely. It's a novel that, well, it didn't just tell a story, it arguably defined a whole generation. So what's our main goal here, our mission for this deep dive with the material we've got?
Right. Well, the mission really is to give you a kind of shortcut to understanding this key moment in American culture, in literature.
Okay.
We'll explore Kerouac's life, fascinating, often pretty tumultuous. We'll unpack those semi-autobiographical adventures of Sal Paradise and Dean
They're
Moriarty.
a famous duo.
Exactly. And look at how this one book just captured the mood,
Right.
and launched the whole beat movement.
Sounds great. Let's start with the man himself, Jack Kerouac. His life, it was brief 1922 to 1969, just 47. But wow, the impact.
Huge impact, and his beginnings are, well, pretty surprising based on our sources.
How so?
French-Canadian roots, for all.
Yeah.
He didn't even speak English until he was about 6 years old.
No kidding. That's amazing.
Yeah, but that writing bug bit him early.
Uh,
Age 10, he's doing a sports news sheet. By 11, he'd written a whole novel.
11? Wow. That drive was there from the start then.
Absolutely. It really sets the stage for the writer he became.
And that desire to write, it seems like it was always there, running alongside this sort of restlessness. We see him go from Columbia University on a football scholarship.
Right, which got cut short by a broken leg.
Then the Marines during the war, then just a whole string of different jobs. How did that kind of wandering, that unconventional path feed into On the Road?
Well, it was basically the raw material. That whole period, the moving around, the odd jobs, it directly fueled his deep need to travel.
Uh-huh.
And they just merged perfectly with his passion for writing. So On the Road really became the ultimate expression of that combination, drawn straight from his life.
And what an expression. The sources really emphasized that his writing style, that spontaneous, unconventional approach, was just as important as the story itself.
Definitely. It was crucial to how the book was received. It felt completely different.
Why was it so groundbreaking, that style?
Well, it was just such a challenge to the accepted literary styles of the day, the spontaneous prose, as he called it.
Right.
It mirrored the chaos, the freedom of the characters. It felt immediate, alive. And while he wrote a lot, maybe 30 books, published and unpublished, including plays, poetry,
Prolific.
very, but he never quite hit that same international nerve again like he did with On the Road. Later books, like Dr. Sachs or Big Sur, they often kind of circled back to similar themes.
Interesting. So maybe he found it hard to move beyond that or just chose not to.
Could be either, or both. It's
Yep.
hard to say definitively. But On the Road captured something unique.
But after all that intense travel in the 40s and 50s, things seemed to get harder for him personally. The sources mentioned some real struggles later on.
Yeah, tragically so.
Right.
After all that movement, he apparently saw more solitude in the 1960s. But he also increasingly battled, well, dependence on alcohol and drugs.
That seems to be a recurring theme in the Beat narrative, unfortunately.
It is. And for Kerouac, it ultimately led to his death from alcohol-related liver failure before the 60s were even over.
Hmm.
His own life was its own kind of intense journey, full of highs and really devastating lows.
Just like the book, in a way. So how did that personal journey translate onto the page in On the Road?
That's exactly it. That semi-autobiographical core is what makes it so powerful. It blurs that line,
Yeah.
between the life lived and the story told.
Uh-huh.
It came out in 57 based on his own travels, his own experiences in the late 40s, early 50s. It's famous because it feels so real.
So let's talk about those central characters, the alter egos. Kerouac as Sal Paradise.
Right.
And his friend Neal Cassady as the magnetic Dean Moriarty.
Yeah.
What's the engine driving their story? What are they doing?
Moving, constantly moving,
Mhm.
traveling all over the U.S., covering these huge distances in crazy short times.
Just pure motion.
Well, it's more than that. It feels like a quest, doesn't it? A search
Yeah.
for something they can't quite name.
And what did that search look like on the ground? The sources talk about, well, a lot of intense experiences.
Oh, yeah. Meetings with girls, wild parties, drinking, drugs, sex.
Yeah.
It's all in there.
And not exactly flush with cash, were they?
Rarely. They were scraping by, delivering cars for people, doing casual work here and there.
Yeah.
And sometimes, yeah, stealing food, drinks, even gas to keep moving.
So what was it about this lifestyle, this story, and that loosely structured writing that just grabbed people back then?
It was like a lightning strike. That combination, the raw style and the sheer freedom of these young people's lives, their behavior, it just captivated the public.
It must have felt so different from the button-down 50s ideal.
Exactly. It wasn't just a novel. It was like holding up a mirror to a different way of being, maybe even creating that way of being for some. And that's why it's stuck around, Still a cult classic. It speaks to that urge for something else.
Okay, so let's try and map out these adventures a bit. Not every single stop, maybe, but what are the key patterns, the feelings that come through in Sal and Dean's journeys?
Right, it's less about a strict itinerary and more about the feel, the rhythm of it. You see this pattern emerge early on. Sal heads west, first time. There's excitement, new people, hitchhiking, interesting encounters, like on that flatbed truck. But there's also disappointment. He spends money on a girl in Denver who leaves him.
The highs and lows again?
Always. He connects with friends, finds Dean, but there's already this undercurrent of things not quite working out, even amidst the energy. Then there's that time picking cotton in Sabinal with Terry.
Yeah, the Mexican girl he meets.
Right. They're trying to make it work, picking cotton for pennies, basically.
Yeah.
It's gritty, it's real, but ultimately he leaves, heads back east. There's this constant cycle of hope, and then, well, moving on.
And Dean Moriarty seems to be the catalyst for a lot of the more, shall we say, chaotic energy.
Oh, absolutely. Dean is the whirlwind. His arrivals are dramatic, like showing up at Sal's relative's place for Christmas with Marilou and Ed Dunkel.
Already planning the next trip.
Always. Buying a car, ready to drive Sal back west. And those cross-country drives, they become legendary in the book. Moving furniture, New Year's parties, another trip west with Dean and Marilou.
Sounds exhausting just hearing about it.
And often really tough.
Yeah.
Getting stuck in mud, dealing with snow, running out of money constantly, needing someone to wire cash.
Right.
And Dean himself becomes more and more erratic. His relationships are a tangle back to Camille. Marilou leaves, then Camille kicks him out.
It's a lot of personal turmoil playing out on the road.
Exactly. Stealing cars, getting drunk.
Yeah.
That crazy, dangerous Cadillac drive to Chicago. He's trying to manage divorces, new marriages, kids arriving.
Yeah.
It's frantic.
Yeah. The sources mention him divorcing Camille to marry Inez, then having a child with Inez pretty quickly.
Right. And even that doesn't stick for long. It paints this picture of incredible energy, but also profound instability. Freedom bordering on self-destruction, maybe.
Yeah. And then there's that final trip to Mexico.
The last big one. Sal's book gets sold. He's planning this trip with Stan Shepard. And boom, Dean shows up. Wants to come along to get a quick divorce in Mexico.
Of course he does.
Mexico City has more parties, girls.
Right.
But then Sal gets really sick with fever.
Oh, wow.
And Dean, he gets his divorce papers and just leaves. Leaves Sal sick in Mexico City, heads back to New York to marry Inez.
Ouch. That's harsh.
That's a pivotal moment. And even that marriage doesn't last. Dean leaves Inez, goes back to Camille. The final time Sal sees him, Dean's hoping Inez will take him back. She kicks him out. Sal just waves goodbye from a car.
And never sees him again.
Apparently not. But Sal says he thinks of Dean often. It's such a poignant ending. It really lands the weight of that lifestyle, the cost of always being on the road.
A powerful, kind of bittersweet conclusion to their shared journey. It really speaks volumes about that constant search, maybe never finding it.
Exactly. It feels like an acknowledgement of the fleeting nature of it all. That maybe the destination was never the point, but the movement itself couldn't sustain them forever.
And that whole spirit, that restlessness, that search, it wasn't just Kerouac and Cassady. It funnels right into the bigger picture. The Beat generation, this cultural movement they were central to.
Absolutely. They were the heart of it, really.
So who were the key players, according to our sources?
Well, there were 4 core friends who all met around Columbia University back in 1946. You had Kerouac, of course, and William Burroughs, both writers.
Right, Naked Lunch.
Exactly. Then Allen Ginsberg, the poet Howl.
Mm-hmm.
And the 4th, Neal Cassady, the wild young man, the real-life Dean Moriarty. These 4 are really seen as the key figures who kicked off the Beat movement.
And Kerouac actually coined the term beat, right? But not meaning tired or worn out?
No, not originally. He connected it to beatitude, meaning blessedness. Kind of spiritual underpinning, almost.
Interesting. So what were these beats, or beatniks as they got called, actually expressing? What was the mood?
It was definitely a post-World War II thing. A feeling of anxiety, anger maybe, rootlessness, a real disillusionment with the whole American dream package, with mainstream society.
They were pushing back hard against conformity.
Totally. They were amplifying a mood that was already maybe simmering under the surface for some people.
That sounds pretty radical for the 50s. How did they end up influencing later movements?
You could argue they were maybe the first literary group of angry young men.
Yeah.
Rebels.
Precursors to the 60s counterculture.
Absolutely.
Right.
They arguably paved the way for protest singers, for hippies, the anti-Vietnam War movement, even punk later on. A key thing they did was encourage young people to question things.
You not just accept what parents or teachers told them.
Right. Which they saw as positive, not destructive. For Kerouac personally, when he traveled, he was looking for something good. He wanted to find and describe the pure beauty of America, the beauty in ordinary people.
So it wasn't just tearing down, there was a seeking involved.
Definitely a seeking.
And this attitude, it wasn't just in their writing, it was their whole lifestyle, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. It showed in how they looked, how they acted. The whole philosophy was about not conforming, about being on the road, literally or metaphorically.
And music was huge for them, right?
Jazz. Immense influence. That free-form, improvisational feel of bebop jazz. You can hear it in their writing style, especially Kerouac's. That spontaneity.
Along with the wild parties, living for the moment.
Yes. And the writing itself wasn't always about polished prose or formal poetry. It was about getting down raw thoughts, feelings, immediacy.
And you mentioned spirituality earlier, the beatitude idea. Were there other spiritual elements?
Yeah, particularly for Kerouac and Ginsberg. There was a real interest in Eastern religions, especially Buddhism. It offered an alternative framework, another way to seek meaning outside conventional structures.
It adds another layer to their nonconformity.
It really does. It's all part of this holistic rejection of the mainstream and a search for something deeper, something more authentic to them.
And circling back to Kerouac's unique style, how much did Neal Cassady, the real dean, directly influence that?
Hugely significant, according to our sources.
Yeah.
Kerouac was captivated by the way Cassady talked, this unhesitating kind of stream of consciousness flow.
Right.
Kerouac actively tried to mimic that in his writing. That free-flowing letter-writing style, trying to capture Cassady's voice on the page, became his trademark.
Wow. So the muse was right there driving the car next to him.
In a very real way, yes. And that legacy. These four guys, despite all the complexities and controversies, they remain cult figures. Admired by many people who still feel drawn to an alternative way of life, their influence really lasts.
What a journey we've taken today, then. We've really dug into Kerouac's life, his unique writing, those wild, iconic adventures of Sal and Dean.
Yeah, the energy, the chaos, the searching.
And looked at how it all exploded into the Beat Generation, changing American culture.
It's quite a story. And on the road, it just captures that restless spirit, that search for meaning so powerfully. It really makes you think, even now.
Absolutely. Which leads us to that final thought. For you, the listener, On the Road is about this relentless quest. In our lives today, with all the connections, the comforts we have, what does it mean for you to truly live on the road?
Or maybe to find that beatitude, that blessedness, in a way that isn't conventional. What are we right now in our time really searching for? Or maybe, what are we running from? Something to think about.